understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we should not place our hands on a child in a nice way or a negative way inside a school unless we have the training and the policy and procedure to support us to do that. If we don't have any children that require restraint or positive handling, and we don't have a policy, in some ways that's okay, because we don't have, some of us don't have schools that have an environment where we would experience that ever, and that's okay. But the moment a child requires to be held is the moment that you, if you haven't already got it in place, you need to have policy and procedure and training in place. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think what, you know, this became, it's always been a concern of mine that we have always, here's the thing, in the UK anyway, we have inset days. I think in the UAE, you do a lot of training in August. You do a lot of training then at various points of it. And of course, we're very busy when schools go, how are we going to fill a training day? Oh, let's do some. Now, what sustains our business through the months of October and November are when we get phone calls from desperate deputy heads and head teachers who are going, I had a teacher injured last week. I checked the certificates, we're all out of date, or we've had no training in years. When can you be here? And that's what sustains our business throughout the entire school year, is urgent calls to fix, if I could use the English phrase, shutting the barn door after the horse. And so, Louise, coming back to your point of, yes, I think as soon as you realize that you have a child in your school who, for whatever reasons, becoming distressed and who's in one of those scenarios that we discussed, it's going to be really important, especially in the UAE, I think, to have all of those ducks lined up, you know. And I've always said, you know, we need, and I think if you did that at that position you were in, Louise, where you had a very senior person with gravitas sign off on a policy, which then could be trickled down or tracked downwards to the individual staff member who has to actually do the holding. That's the safest way you can set this up. And I think it's going to, my experience in Abu Dhabi last time I was there was that process takes a lot of time, because various people in the chain of leadership need to understand the need, they need to understand the problems. They need to understand
and the repercussion if we get it wrong for a child. So it doesn't take an awful lot. I mean, I'm 6 foot tall and I'm not particularly slight, but it doesn't actually, I've been in situations and I've seen children get hurt, not in the UAE, granted it was in the UK, because we don't always realize the strength of ourselves as adults. And when you're dealing, especially with primary school children, it did not take a lot to harm George Floyd. Okay. So we saw that, most of us saw that on camera. It did not take an awful lot. Now, I don't think anyone that I know, and certainly no one here, would kneel on a child, but actually holding a child face down, holding a child's arm behind their back, you know, restraining them into a chair and holding them into a chair, all of those things can be extremely dangerous. And I don't think we always know that before we've had the training. And I think when in my very first training, we were taught about the way that our joints move, and that actually with some very simple holding, you're supporting the joints not to move without actually causing any harm at all. That's right. And I think vital training is to stay away from the chest area, isn't it? No contact at all with between the head and the stomach. I think that the training is incredibly vital for everyone to have, so that they know. And there's different levels of training. If you're in a school who doesn't need to hold, then the holding isn't the vital part of the training.
Absolutely.
The holding, the de-escalation techniques, the behaviour management, and understanding that when a child is frustrated, kicking off, whatever, they are just exhibiting a frustration of behaviour. Behaviour is communication. And that's what we need to unpick first, so we don't get to that point. But we do always know, we know that one child who just kicks off without any forewarning, never done it before. Knowing how to handle it is key.
So I worked with a large group of schools down in Abu Dhabi on an instructor program last time I was there in about 2019. And we went through a whole week of developing, I think, half a dozen instructors. we went through all the de-escalation tactics, we went through all the physical tactics, and at the end of it, they decided that they were going to spend the next year just rolling out the de-escalation, the understanding behavior, the how to talk to the children so that they could gain cooperation from them, how to get this emotional equilibrium. And they said, look, we'll get to the physical skills later, but what we think is critical to get out to our schools right now is we need to change the way we're interacting with the children so that the need for these other more risky interventions, let's face it, are reduced.